Welcome to the Female Athlete Summit, the online platform for female athletes, sports coaches, fitness coaches, and parents. The purpose of the Female Athlete Summit is to educate and to have a conversation about the topics surrounding female athletes on and off the playing field. Today, my guest is Lisa Pinkston. She is the owner of Softball Preps, USA Softball Tournament, director in Indiana, the head softball coach at Assumption High School in Louisville, and the vice president of the Indiana Fusion League. Oh my God, Lisa, that is a lot of stuff. So welcome to the call. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, Jen, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk about, I know that you played softball, high school, and in college. So let's talk about your background as an athlete right now.
Okay, Jen, so I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm 36, so I grew up in Kentucky in a time where fast pitch softball was just kind of getting going. So just like historically, we've always been kind of behind the times on like from the West Coast or like down south in Florida. So in the last 20 years here in Kentucky and kind of this region of the country, there's been a huge growth in softball. So I grew up, went to public school. I was a public school kid, played travel ball at a high level, and then was recruited to the University of Louisville, where I received a scholarship and was a 4-year starting catcher there.
Nice. All right. So you definitely have your experience as a softball player. And then after you graduated the University of Louisville, did you get right into coaching? What'd you do right after that?
So I've always been involved in softball from a young age. I mean, I started coaching and giving lessons like when I was a teenager, and then started getting more experience when I was a player in college, working camps and clinics and continuing private instruction. When I graduated from college, my degree was in business administration. So I've always kind of had that like entrepreneurial spirit. So when I graduated from college, I went out into the corporate world, did some things and just really wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. And so ended up going back to the University of Louisville, where I was on staff there for 5 years as the director of softball operations there for the softball program.
Nice. All right. So currently, I mean, because you had a lot in your bio, currently, what is kind of like your main job that you're doing now?
Well, so when I was on staff there at the University of Louisville, it enabled me to kind of see the back end of the business per se at the university. So, a lot of my responsibilities in there was like the management of the business side of the team, and some coordination with recruiting and kind of just supporting the coaches and just kind of helping to create the vision of what recruits we wanted to kind of attract. And so, from there I transitioned. I basically ended up leaving the college side of the business just to have a little bit more family balance at home. I've got 2 small boys and just needed to kind of balance my life a little bit more. So when I left the university, I then opened an indoor private instruction facility. So just giving lessons and hosting camps and clinics. And so that has transitioned me to help the community and help these, high school kids transition into college, and to help kind of guide parents through the recruiting process, which can be cumbersome at times.
Okay, so let's talk about how I know you first is softball prep. So what exactly is softball preps? And then we'll kind of transition in to the recruiting aspect.
Right. So basically, what we do at Softball Preps is we give private instruction. We host camps and clinics. We'll start with kids as young as 8 years old all the way up to 18. So just trying to guide these families and provide, services to these families that fit them from, babies all the way till it's time to go to college. We just recently hosted a college exposure camp back in January, where we brought in 15 Division II, III NAIA schools, to recruit kids or players in this area. So our main focus with Softball Preps is private instruction, so giving them the skills they need to compete at a high level, guiding them through the recruiting process. And then we also host some showcase camps and some tournaments and things of that nature. So we try to provide we try to become just that trusted resource for parents to lean on all the way through the process.
Excellent. All right. So kind of the topic of this interview is recruiting. So let's get into recruiting. You said you basically guide the players and parents kind of through the recruiting process. So let's start there. Kind of when you have an athlete, kind of talk to me about the recruiting process and what you're guiding them through.
Right. So, I think the biggest thing is for players to really get a sense of like, what do they want for their college experience? What is it that they want? And I know for like a 14, 15, 16-year-old, I mean, they don't know what they want, right? So I basically start with just a few basic things for them to think about. The first thing when just trying to figure out like, what do you want for your college experience? It's like how far do you want to go away from home? So if home is in Louisville, Kentucky, what's the radius around Louisville, Kentucky that you would feel comfortable going? Is it 2 hours? Is it 4 to 6 hours? Is it a plane ride, away? So the first thing is I try to get, our athletes to really get a sense of truly like how comfortable do you feel like as far as distance wise leaving home. So that kind of what that does is that kind of just puts a map, and then you just kind of draw a map, a radius around, where you live. And then that kind of narrows down your search. The second thing that I asked them about the school that they would potentially be interested in is how large of a school. Like, do you want to go to a school with 30,000, 20,000 students? Does that excite you? Would you rather go to a school where it's a smaller campus where maybe there's, 5,000 students on campus? So the next thing is like, when you think about your personality, think about, where's your comfort? Like if you go to a high school with a couple thousand kids in your graduating class, then maybe you would feel comfortable going to a larger university. If you go to a small private school and you only have 100 kids in your class, maybe you would feel comfortable, going to a smaller school. So just think about those aspects. Like, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? So that's another thing to think about. So we've talked about the distance away from your home. We've talked about just the general size of the institution that you're looking at. And then the third thing is like, what do you think you want to study? Like, are you thinking that you want business? Are you thinking that you want to go pre-med? What is it that you think you want to study? Do you want to study, do you want to be a police officer? Do you want to study like liberal arts? So just trying to get a general feeling of like where your interest kind of lies. And for some kids that's harder than others, but, trying to look at schools that offer what you're interested in. And then, so you notice like I've talked about things and I haven't even talked about softball yet. So the next thing to think about is softball wise, like, do you want to contribute to that team as a freshman right away on the field? Do you feel comfortable sitting the bench for a couple of years before you get in there to make an impact? And so, just kind of thinking through those things will help, determine that school. So, and I say this thing because a lot of parents think that Division I is the end all be all, like that's the only option. But, I'm here to tell you, like, expand your horizons, be open, because there's a lot of really cool schools in smaller Division I, Division II, III, NAIA that offer a lot. And so playing time is important. So if you're a player that has a hard time, kind of sitting the bench and accepting your role, then you may want to think about going to a smaller school where you can make an impact right away. So those are some things to think about.
So I love that. I love that you kind of started, oh, bless you. I love that you started like student and then you kind of progressed to like being the athlete. Because I think some of these kids, when they're in high school, they think they're going to play softball forever. And that's not the case. A very small percentage will go on to play professionally. So I love that you addressed kind of the school aspect. That's awesome. So you touched a little bit upon the parents and kind of what parents should be thinking about. Well, let's go a little bit deeper. Like, what advice do you want to give to parents out there, kind of help their kids, guide them, and as you just touched on, make them understand that a Division I might not be the best option. D2, D3 could be a great option. So again, let's give some advice to the parents now.
Well, my advice to parents is 90% of these kids who will go on to play at the next level are playing some sort of travel ball, right? So these families have the disposable income to send their kids to college. So I think if parents can just take the pressure off of their children and say, listen, like, you're going to college no matter what. We will make this possible for you no matter what. Playing softball is a bonus, and playing softball is not the only reason you're going to college. You're going to college to get an education. Plus, the cool thing, if you get to participate in softball, that's awesome too. So I think if parents take some of the pressure off of their children as far as just saying, listen, you're going to college, let's find a solution that can meet both. I think it's helpful to the kid because a lot of these players are starting to feel just a ton of pressure at a really early age. And I think just being realistic with your athletic ability. So as you're, we talked about that radius around where you live. And if you, say you start with a list of 20 schools at the very beginning of your process, right? And, maybe you put in that list of 20, you put some dream schools in there, like, kind of pie in the sky, like dream schools at a high level where you can play. And then in the middle of your list, you put schools where you know that you can contribute, that you would, it would be a good fit for you both academically and you can compete at that level. And then you put at the bottom of your 20 list of schools, like smaller division schools where maybe they're smaller institutions, but they're schools where there is absolutely no question that you can contribute to the softball team. Academically, it's still a good fit, but maybe like softball wise, maybe it's like a lower division school. So that's my advice to parents is like, make sure that your portfolio of schools is well, like diversified, and that, you have those dream schools that are kind of pushing your limits softball wise. You have those middle of the road schools where there's no question you can play. And then those lower level schools that you go to like as a plan B, plan C, where no doubt you can play. Maybe it's more of an academic institution as opposed to athletic, but you're still being able to do both.
So we touched on a little bit like Division I, Division II, Division III, and then I think you said the NIA. Can you go into like briefly, like what's the difference between recruiting when you're going D1, D2, D3, or is there a difference?
Yeah, like, so, Division I, the recruiting rules are like in the process of being changing right now. A good resource for parents to go to is the NFCA.org. That's the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association website. Okay, on that website, there's going to be a list of all the Division I schools, all the Division II schools, all the Division III schools, all the NAIA schools, and you can learn about the differences between those divisions. Obviously, with the Division I schools, the recruiting is it's a lot more aggressive. So the recruiting process right now is pretty early, and there's some laws trying to be changed with the NCAA with the help of the NFCA, the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association, to push back early recruiting. As you go Division II, III, NAIA, in my opinion, those divisions are a lot more balanced. So they're not pushing, freshmen to make a decision on recruiting until more like their junior, senior year. In my opinion, I think Division II and III NAIA provide a little bit more balance of an education and, athletic experience. I was a Division I athlete, so it was kind of more business-like on the athletic front. But that's a good resource. And then also NCAA website, take advantage of those resources on there as well, to be able to kind of give you the difference between the three.
Okay, we'll add those links to the bottom of the interview so anyone that wants to look it up, they can. So I was a basketball player, so I don't know much about softball, but you keep saying the NAIA. What is the NAIA?
It's the national, I'm going to have to reference that. Can you put that link in there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because I'm more of an expert and more of the NCAA Division I, II, III. I do know the NAIA does have funds available.
Okay.
But if you could put that link to the NAIA schools in there, they're typically smaller universities. The NAIA is a different sanctioning body than the NCAA.
Got it. You answered my question because I didn't know even what it was. So perfect. We'll put that link in too.
Yeah, put the NAIA, yes.
Perfect. So kind of as we're wrapping this up, like again, not all female athletes that play softball in high school are going to get a scholarship. So what would your advice be to those players that have a passion to play and want to continue to play in college? Again, what would your advice be?
Yeah, so for those that have a passion that want to play, I think that there's a roster spot for everyone. I really do feel that way. If you have a passion and desire and a willingness to put in the work, I do feel like there is a roster spot for you. I think it starts with just making those personal relationships with those coaches, just like anything else in life. Some things that you can do. You can attend camps and clinics in which those coaches are there. So just jump on the website, for those schools that you're interested in, check out their camps and clinics dates. So I think establishing that relationship, those coaches being able to work one-on-one with you, I think is huge. So attending camps, like starting from your freshman year in high school, just pick a couple different camps a year at different schools that you have an interest in and attend those camps. The other thing that I will tell you is just be persistent with those coaches. So, set up some type of calendar where you're communicating with those coaches, sending emails every couple weeks to those coaches, updates on your playing schedule. Those coaches are going to want to see you compete. So send them your travel ball schedules. You can send short clips, 20-second, 30-second, 60-second clips of, you training with your private instructor or game footage or anything to basically keep those coaches in the loop for you. Like you just want to stay like top of mind for them. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Like it's just, sending them a quick email that just says, "Hey coach, just want to let you know what we've been working on. Here's a short clip of me doing X, Y, Z." But just being consistent with your messaging to those coaches. So I've talked about attending camps and clinics. It's huge. Communicating with those coaches. It's huge. Be willing to do things that others are not willing to do. So, a lot of times like these teenagers these days, like they don't really feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling. I say pick up the phone and call. Even if you are kind of nervous about making that phone call to that coach, wait till about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon when that coach is at practice. Just leave them a quick voicemail. It just says, "Hey, Coach Pearsall, you might be at practice right now, but I just want to leave you a quick message just to say, hey, good luck this weekend at your tournament," or something of that nature that sets you apart from the rest of the population. I think that's important because I think coaches want to know that you want to play for their school. I think it's important. Like I think coaches don't want to feel like you're just shopping around to see who would be willing to give you money. I think it's important for coaches, and talking about universities and colleges, I think it's important for those coaches to feel like you want to wear, their name on your chest. And so oftentimes I think on the other end, like talking about the college coaches, they feel that a lot of these families are just shopping around just to see who'd be willing to give what amount of money, as opposed to that kid have a genuine interest and kind of like pride in that school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's some great advice you just dropped right there. So I enjoyed talking with you. I mean, I learned a little bit more about kind of the recruiting process. So if someone wanted to look you up, what's your website and then social media? Where should they find you?
Yeah, so my website is softballpreps.com. You can also find me on Twitter, Lisa. I think my handle on Twitter, and maybe you can put it in there for me, Jen, but it's Lisa Mac Pinkston, my main name, Mac, M-A-C. So it's Lisa, M-A-C Pinkston. You can find me on there. And of course, you can Facebook me as well. I mean, I don't plan to know, or I don't claim to know that I have all the answers, but what I do know and how I live my life is that if you have a passion and you have a desire for something and you're willing to work really hard for it, good things will happen. And my parents did the best they could for me. My father didn't even graduate from college. But they were just really hardworking blue collar people. And so, my family just kind of has this, we pride ourselves just on working really hard. And that's what I try to instill in my softball players is just work hard and good things happen to those who work hard.
I love it. We definitely, as coaches and as parents, need to instill work in our young athletes today. I think that's a missing ingredient. So, Lisa, thank you again. I'd love talking to you, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me, Jen.